I am everything that I said I am. Keep my shit tight, man, motherfucking Hoover Dam. And I ain't cracking anytime soon. My mindset is fine-tuned, this where will be mine soon. Show down at high noon, sharp as a harpoon, crash like a monsoon, style like a costume, I'm constantly awesome.
So today I just got a Team Legit wombat kit in, and I decided to do a build video. We don't need this box. It comes with a checklist. Looks like we were packed by Ian. And it comes with a wing core set, wing beds, wings, ailerons, control horns, motor mount, clevis, control horn set, booms, all your coroplast you need, super cool stickers, super cool keychain, looks like 4-foot fiberglass spars, 4 flat carbon spars, and an awesome shirt and some lamb. So first thing I did was I matched everything up. I marked everything, right wing top for the plates, right wing bottom. Okay, first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to take the right bottom and left bottom, place them together, make sure they all line up nice and flush. And they do. We're going to use this when we glue our stuff together. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to use some cheap glue. I'm just going to use some Gorilla Glue because this is something I can buy locally and it dries pretty quick. So I'm going to use this once I get it unclogged. Glue. Transfer the glue. Get it all spread out. 1 or 2, 3 sprays. The more water you give it, the more it'll foam up. So we're going to line this back up. You can use welders, some people like goop. There's a lot of good glues to choose from. What I like to do is go around the edges, get it nice and thick, and then take these, place them on the tray. Make sure everything lines up really good. All the edges line up on the tray. These are nice and tight. Make sure everything looks even, minus the hair. Now once you get it all lined up, I'm going to keep her there. So again, I'll use some T-pins. eczema. Take some good old blue tape. Mark out my line. We're going to uncover these lines here. These I can use. So no need to get a little crazy. There. Now, what a lot of people like to use is an X-Acto knife. And this was crusty, but you can score down, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 of an inch, whatever get big enough for that spar. We're going to use the round spars on this one, the round glass one. Deep enough for that spar to get into. But I'm not going to do it that way. I'm going to do it my own way. You can use an X-Acto knife, but what I use is this good old thing. It's a little barbaric, but I like it because it removes the foam that we're going to put the spar in, instead of displacing it and having it pinch up and look really gnarly. I do it this way. It makes a nice clean groove, and the spar gets in there really nice. I'll mark it as just a reference line so I know how deep I am. Put a little bit of tape on here. And I'll let it rip.
And if you can hear me, then throw up. Give me a sign, throw a stick, you bring me back. Roll over and die. You taught me a lesson, mama. Thanks, Mom!
Just get a good mark of where your motor mount is going to line up. So what I'll do is take this, line this up with the lines you made for the inside, and then just trace out 2 lines. This is how thick you're going to need to cut for this motor mount. And this line is actually going to go all the way back. So okay, I cut this out. I had to do a slight M pattern. So in the future, if you watch this video before the build, you could move these spars just a hair forward and you won't have to worry about this. But in my case, I already did it. You live, you learn. And I took my center marks that I have here that I made before in the center of the wing. I measured the thickness and I made center marks on the inside of the cut I just made. Now I'm going to transfer this so it's nice and level. I'm going to transfer this line from the center to the center. This will help me guide the cut when I install the motor mount. This center here is going to need a little bit to cut into it where I made the M shape. It's all no big deal. Also, I have, instead of using a blade on the center, I used my hot knife. That's why it's kind of melted there. You won't see that after paint. I'll clean that up later. But for right now, I'm going to begin to cut this. And I'll install the motor mount. You can use a razor blade, but I like to use this. Take a razor blade, X-Acto knife, get that deep corner cut. You go into the wing a little too far, it shouldn't hurt anything. You got good foam glue, you can always glue it back together. So, make sure it's good and clean. I'll do a dry fit. You can even use this to Try to cut into it a little bit. Feel around. Look for areas that need a little more trimming. And she fits. I'm also going to transfer this center line so I can line it up. Okay. I took my grinder, little angle grinder, and I grinded up the edges that go and mate against the foam. Now, I'm going to take a little bit of goop and I'm going to inject the crack with it.
With eloquent.
Okay, I actually got it glued in place. I took 2 popsicle sticks and bridged them across. Added the clamps to that way the clamps don't leave any dents in the foam. Keep it tight and let her dry. I also cut the top flush because the spars aren't in the way, and I left the end pattern on the bottom. Okay, while the motor mount's drying, I moved on to the fuselage. I actually did my own little take on the camera mount. I took a old hardcore 3D printed mount and adapted it to this as a nose piece / camera mount. I've just had good luck with these on the wings, and I just like the way it protects the camera and looks, and it kind of works really well with this. It only sticks out because it's actually flared out a little bit here. And I'm going to use the remaining spars to spar out the fuselage. So with this, I just simply made a mark about halfway. Then I made a mark about a 1/4 inch down from the edge, and did the same thing on this side, and then I connected these two. I want about 1 inch back into the wing. That way this is all supported, and when you hollow it out for your battery and whatnot, it's going to have some support on the sides. That way it doesn't weaken the structure. You can go further up normally, but this camera mount's going to stop me a little bit. Again, this is merely a guide. Nothing is set in stone. I'm not going off of anybody's spar pattern. I'm not going off of anybody's spar pattern but my own pattern that I thought up. So before you try to go saving the internet on my comment section, if you like to do it differently, do it differently. Put it out there. But I haven't seen much on info for these builds, so that's the reason why I'm trying to. Now I dry fit everything. After these 2 spars, you may run out of spars. I had to get into my extra one to do this. This is kind of like a little bonus I'm adding in there. Whenever I get a new plane kit, I tend to order 1 or 2 extra spars to put them where I think they're needed, or just to have for repairs and whatnot. The wing had the beds, and I could sit weights on the wing beds and get that all lined up nice. Since we can't do that with this, we're going to do something a little differently. I'm not going to glue this, but I am going to fit these two together temporarily. I'll use my pins in the back. Just so that as these spars dry, they're drying to the form that they're going to sit at. While this dries, I did actually put a weight on top, and I'm allowing all this section to dry. But in the meantime, I decided I'd kind of mock this up, the boom section. What I did was I slid these up, pinned them. I put this pin right where the boom cut is into the wing, so I can measure with that. And I put my motor at the furthest possible point that I'd like this mount to let it. I don't know where the CG will be, but I want to be able to build it, to be able to fit everything and still have a little wiggle room, and I can make adjustments with the motor, slide it in or out. I didn't see any true numbers everybody's been going off of for booms, so I mopped it up, and what I'm going to do is measure it. I'm going to give it a little bit of play. I'm not going off of any specific number. I kind of mocked it up, and we're sitting at about 6 inches would look good. Sitting at a 6 1/4. I think 6 inches would give me a nice, good length. So what I'm going to do, now that I know it's 6 inches from the cut, not from here, from the cut, I'm going to take these off. I'm going to mark my 6, and I'll cut the booms accordingly. Now that's to the leading edge. So you can either measure it or mock it up. I'm just going to mock it up. Now this is going to be for the boom section. So we got 6 inches here to the leading edge of the boom elevator wing, and I'll just mark it here at the back. I'll just eyeball it, that's fine. It seems to be cut pretty well. I'm just going to transfer that all the way around so I can get a nice clean cut. Looks good. Do the same for this side. 6 inches. Awesome. So we toss that core press to the side. Compare these two. Look like my marks line up nice. And we will cut them to length for the tail boom. Trick slant job on them. That way they don't just look flat. Kind of look very plain that way. And pretty much going to sit like this. On the plane. Now, what we need to know is where we're going to put the actual elevator flap. So, instead of measuring and all that jazz, I'm going to take the cut off pieces for the booms. I'm going to put a single little tiny mark that I can wipe off later or cover with paint. And I'll repeat this on the other side. Now, since when I put these booms on, I want to have some area to bridge a little bit of goop. What I'm going to do is possibly leave it, I'm going to take a stab at it and say at 1/2 inch. Half an inch from the mark I made on the inside, and this is where I'm actually going to make the cut for the elevator. Now, I think I'm going to go about roughly an inch and 5/8 in. I think that should be enough. For my elevator to get working. I haven't seen any solid numbers on it, but it should work. All it would be is a matter of how much, rate you would apply to need more. I'm sure once more of these get built, people have a lot more better references for people to go off of, or you could just go off mine. Alright. Now that I have those marked out, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this damn tool that I love so much. Take like a standard nail file, try to run it down. Be careful not to wrinkle it up, kind of support everything as it goes through. gets the little boogers off. Be careful not to cut into it. Now, after that's done, what you're going to want to do is get out your X-Acto knife. You want to get a nice fresh blade for this. Because you don't want to have this cut looking bad, and it's going to be pretty much a one-shot deal. And what you're going to do is you're going to cut on the inside of 2 of these lines. Pick 2 where your hinge ends, and you'll cut out this center section between the 2 inside lines. When I say inside lines, I mean these. Stay in between these 2 and just take out one side. Don't cut through into the other side. Turn on a little extra light for this. Actually, I think it'd be better if I had a more visible line. So I'm going to tape this off on the inside of these lines. That way I can follow the tape and I don't have to steady look for the line the whole time. Now I'm going to go on the inside of this side. Repeat. And angle the blade slightly in. And now we have an elevator. Looks good. And with my other planes like this, happen to cut through or anything, or during your build, it helps to take a little bit of clear tape, maybe such as some Gorilla Tape, and reinforce everything. Just put a little piece of tape across here. It can help you in the long run, because eventually the coroplast will start to wear out a little bit. It'll start to get jagged, it'll get tired, it'll crack more. So once you build it, put a small strip of tape once everything's done, and it should get you a lot more life out of it. Okay, everything is dry fit, and I'm going to take these out one by one, scuff them up with my sanding block lightly, try not to breathe in the dust from the carbon fiber. Put some glue in there and set all the spars. And I'm going to leave this on the table. I'm going to try to tack these together. Like I said, I'm just leaving a little bit out, so when I go to mate it to the wing, all these should lock in and have a nice solid bond. That way these are less likely to break off. So I got them all glued in. I got my sticky fingers. I put duct tape down on my table so I don't get glue any more than I already have on it. And I put a piece of duct tape lightly across just the ends, not the whole foam, just to hold everything together and keep these pieces of foam pinched down on this spar. Keep it all nice and flat so that spar comes out where we want it to. You know, I honestly don't know if it will go in there or not, but we'll see in the future. But hey, it should be strong if it works. Quick note, after looking at it, I was hoping the airfoil was going to raise a little bit here so this one could actually sink in. It's not going to happen, which isn't a big deal. I still wanted to spar this area anyway. I'll just clip it off here. I still wanted to spar this area anyway because while it's on the wing, it'll be pulled, and instead of having just a little bit of foam, we're going to have a spar in there, and that'll give it a little bit of strength there so it doesn't get pulled off as easy. No harm, no foul. We'll just clip these off, but we will still leave these bottom three, which I know will work. I basically got everything laid out sort of to the way I'd like to run it. I got my components on. I marked the CG line across, which is 2 1/4 inches back from the leading edge of the wing. I scored a line across to mark that, and I laid my components out. I put the motor in a middle position. That way it can move back and forth either way for adjustments later. I'm also going to carve the battery bay out a little bigger, a little longer. That way I can move the battery on maiden and get my CG right, and then I'll lock it in with a piece of foam later. That's just how I do things, especially with a plane I've never built before, so I don't know how everything's going to be in the end. So I want to be able to have a little bit of play, but what I do is I mark the line. I put some pins on the edge right now, and right here with all the components in, my CG is right on the money. So it looks like if I get everything locked in this general area, I will be lucky and I'll still have the battery and the motor to play with to adjust CG upon the finish of the build. So I got the linkages on, the ailerons, all the parts for the rear, not glued together yet, and it all looks good so far. So I think I'm gonna stick with this little plan I have in my head, and we'll see how it all pans out. Quick note, if you don't know how to mark out CG, basically what I do is I measure 2 1/4 back from the leading edge here, and then I'll make a line. I'll mark it. I'll take a square and I'll line it up with the line down the center of the wings and mark it out this way, and flip it, same thing. Okay, I just marked out my ailerons. What I did for that, some people like to make them forward, some people go along with a right angle against this edge. I prefer to go a right angle against this edge. If you go forward, you tend to have a little bit of twisting down here, and I don't like that. Plus, this is the easiest way to get it accurately with minimal time. So what I did was, first I mocked my booms up. I put my booms into place, and I made sure I would clear these. You know, I found a measurement. I took my square here, and I found a measurement back far enough that will make me clear these booms. So, I kind of rounded it off to the easiest number. In my case, I went 2 1/4, just because it sounded like a good number, because that's the same as the CG on the plane. It's something I could memorize. So I made a mark, 2 1/4. Took my carpenter square here, made a line, and I decided to go about 4 inches back towards the front, and I marked a line here, and I marked a line here. Then after that, you could take a square or whatever. I actually took this because it's easier to flex because this has this ledge. I took the rear coroplast, which is actually cut on a perfect right angle, and I used that to mark out my lines. And after that, I took my servo, just kind of eyeballed it. I laid it into this corner, and I made a mark here, here, and here on all my corners. And I like to use these round servo horns versus the little tiny arms, because these have so much meat on each side of them. They're less likely to break, in my opinion. I've had really good luck with these. I've broke a lot of the arms ever since I started using these. I haven't broke one yet, but they require a little bit more room towards the front versus an arm that's just going to be here. It'll need a little bit more digging to get down below the surface, but I think it's worth it. It's better than having to change these out, and that can be a real pain in the butt. So what I did for that is I just kind of eyeballed it. I wanted to be able to still have room to get in there to that screw if I need to, even if I need to push and do some emergency work, if something, my servo breaks or something of that sort. So I made a line about a 1/2 inch out, and I went up about a 1/4 inch and just scored a line here and here. This is going to be for this. So now I know in this box I just need to carve this thickness out, and here I need to carve out a nice little round bottom to that for this, for clearance. So those are marked out, and what I like to do is I could take a razor knife and I score the inside of my lines. I always start small and then work my way bigger. You don't want to accidentally cut this too big, and then you're going to have to fill it with a bunch of goop and it just looks like crap. So always start smaller and work your way up if you need to. What I like to do is just take an X-Acto knife and cut out my pattern here, and I can either pluck it a little bit or sit and use a Dremel tool. And another quick tip, I am marking this out. The fuselage is actually 2.5 inches, so from the line in the center I'm marking out 1.25 inches, and I'm making my mark on the outside of that line. So when I put the fuselage on, I'll have a nice line for mocking it up of where the center will be. I think it helps. And when you mark these, you put it right at the line, mark it on the outside, find a straight edge. Or I'm using this piece of coroplast that came with the kit, and I'm just going to line it up because it bends around the airfoil. I'm just going to line that up. And I'm going to mark this out. It's not going to be perfect, but it'll be a nice little guide for us to know where the fuselage lines up.
Determination. I've got to keep pushing myself.
Okay, I marked out my fuselage for the ESC. I know I want to put it here. This is just where I like to put all my ESCs. You know, I can make up the difference in weight with the battery if need be. But I went through here. I marked out the corners of the ESC and how big I want it, and I left a little bit of slack here in this area because I made a mark from my servos over to here, and I know I'm going to run my wires up through here, and they'll meet up with these signal wires and go to the radio. And I use this tool to mill this down.
Stop working hard.
I kind of didn't show you what I did, so I'm going to give you an update. I pretty much used the same technique when I left off. I cut out the center section, made a little inset with my multi-tool and whatnot for covers. I just cut out a few things. Basically what I did. It could have been long and drawn out for the video, so let's get started. First thing I did for that was I cut out my battery bay, and I got everything lined up where I want to have it. I put my battery in here. I'm going to use a big old Turnigy 1800. I got it all lined up, and I'm trying to find out where I like to basically I like to take my VTX and set it to the side and do it last. That way I can use this. This is a good thing. This antenna and this VTX is a good thing to shift around for weight. So what I like to do is get all my components on, what I'm going to use, and then I'll do the VTX last because I like to keep it open so it gets air across it and whatnot. So I got all my components laid out. My CG with these pins looks to be a little tail heavy. So my CG line is here. So I'm thinking I may put this VTX somewhere in this area to see. And that's right on. Of course things are going to change once I paint it and laminate it, but this is the best way to get everything as well lined up as you can. It's all kind of a guessing game, but this is what I'm doing. So I'll take all this off and show you what I've done. First off is my battery bay. I cut this out. I'm gonna put my OSD here, and I got this weird tube. This is something new I'm trying. I don't recommend it. I'm not going to tell everybody to do this because I haven't done this yet. This is my first time trying this trick. But I got some ice maker line from a local hardware store, and I started using that to run my wires because I hate putting my wires inset and glued in because planes tend to flex a lot, and sometimes you'll have connections break loose, and just from all that flex, and it's really hard to find. So I want to make this plane as solid and nice as I can. I'm not really shooting for super lightweight because it's not really a racing plane. This is kind of a fun basher, and in order to bash it, it needs to be able to take a bash. So basically I'm trying to make it as easy as I can to work on and change out components as I can. I've also taken this hatch here, and I ran a piece of little piece of spar across through the coroplast to make this kind of a hinged deal, and that's going to open up to my ESC. And I've also made a hole down in here to go to my radio. I have my radio underneath here. Also, I made a hole here going to the front bay for RSSI to my OSD. This is one thing I was saying, I do not recommend it. I don't know how it's going to work out, but it's something I'm experimenting with. I could have done this in the beginning by going through the sides of the wings before I glued it together, but instead I just did it afterwards. I took some more of this hose here and I inlaid a small piece. I took some pins, put them in there, and I used some regular old Gorilla Glue, Gorilla Glued it, put some water on it, put some tape, and I put this back on the wing bed and put all the weights back on it. So when the Gorilla Glue expands, it stays within range of where I want it to be. After that was done, I lightly scuffed it up and I went over it with a little bit of goop to smooth it off. This way I can change out ESCs if I want. I'll just pull these plugs and I can run my wires straight through these tubes here out to the center, down into my radio, and once I get it all painted up, you shouldn't notice a difference anyway. Also, I did not have enough coroplast to do the bottom radio. I wanted to leave a lot of room here, but I didn't want to go too deep, so I left it kind of tapered here for my wires to bunch up or whatever, keep it looking clean. I just kind of snaked this coroplast sign off the side of the road a long time ago, and I'll just use a chunk of that, and that's going to be my radio cover. Another quick note, I added a spar in the back here since I cut this tray, leave a little bit of strength. Also, I made a small notch back here for my ESC wires to come out the back into the motor. Down here, this is the one that goes to my radio, and on the back side, this is going to be my power coming from the RROSD going to the ESC. So I made it go through. I made a small groove up the center and over to the ESC bay so I can power that. So when it's done, I think it should look pretty clean. Wish me luck. Not too bad, not many wrinkles, a few little bubbles because it's such a dark color, but overall I say she looks good. Now to do the rest. Also, this watch going over paint. If you touch any of your paint with the hot iron, it could like smear around on top. I don't know. Good luck, guys. This laminate is really nice that they give you with the kit. I like that the most. This is some of the best laminate I've worked with. Okay, I got it all laminated up and seems to be looking alright. Well, that was easy. And for installing the servos, I just used some regular old goop. Try to flush mount them, even with the airfoil. and we should be good. Put a little bit of amazing goop, not too much so it squeezes out the sides and binds up your servo, but enough to make it stick, because all the torque from the elevons will be on this. So you don't want to have one of these come loose. You can chase it around for a while trying to figure out what's making your plane fly funny. And it could just be a loose servo. A little extra chrome hanging off here. Tuck that in. And then I'll let that dry, and if it doesn't stick good enough later on, I'll add a little bit more to the edges and put some clear tape over it. But if I give it enough time, she shall stick pretty good. And then I'll put the plug back on. This guy here, oops. And one more. And Shazam, motherfuckers. Shit looks good. Sweet. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna wire this whole thing up before gluing it together. I'm gonna wipe this down with a little bit of alcohol, take some of the shine off of the laminate where the fuselage meets the wing, and I'm going to wire it up since it's easier to work on the bench here. I can wire up all my electronics and whatnot, and yeah, I'm going to wire it up here on the bench and glue it all together. That way it's nice and easy, and she should be pretty tight. So after that I'm going to do electronics, and I'll come back with some more details. Okay, on to the booms. Normally I ripped this off earlier, but sand this down if you want to make a mechanical bond. Rough this up where you're going to glue it, and you can make a mechanical bond that way, or you can do it this way. I'm leaving the laminate on, so if it does break, I can just glue it back on later. You know, the chance is less likely to damage the phone. And what I'm going to do with this is just try to line it up, eyeball it up the best I can with my work table here using the lines, and try to even these two up as close as I can. And then I'm going to just run off of the corners. I'm going to look at the sides here, run off this side here, and then look at my lines on my table and make sure it's in a generally straight direction. I just want to get it lined up nice this way before I attach it. That way it's attached here straight, and it can act as a guide in keeping it straight when I attach it to the actual wing. And I'm going to use my handy dandy T-pins to hold it in place. Nice and flush this way, nice and flush that way. I'm going to go in through the side so you don't see the hole later with the coroplast, and do these nice and flush. Now on to the next one. Make this. I'm just leaving lamb between everything. That way if those areas come apart, good deal, I'll just glue it back together. I'd rather do that than break a spar or break foam. So I'm going to try that approach with this build. So far, I'm really liking this build. I like the laminate. It may not look awesome under this light, but I'm overall pleased with the job. Pleased with the laminate. And I've been having fun with this kit. It's not going to necessarily a slap together kit, but I've been having a ball doing it. It's been keeping me busy. So I'm going to try to get these lined up the way I want it. And put a square on it. See what she looks like. Doesn't look bad. Dead nuts square, and I will put some random weights on this. And come back in the morning. Later on, I'll go around all the edges of everything and kind of like caulk it with the goop. That's what the goop is perfect for. I'm going to install the booms. First I'm going to take the wing bed and I'm going to put a little bit of tape here so no glue leaks out and gets stuck to the wing bed and then we can't get it off and we look stupid. So I'm going to do that and I'm going to pin it down right where I want it. You can double check. I checked my wing bed and made sure it was level with the center of my motor mount to the leading edge of the wing. They're both about the same height, so I'm going to use this to keep it level. I'm going to throw a weight on there for good measure, and what I'm going to use for this is cleaned it up. I'm going to use some good old welder's glue. This stuff is super strong. You could probably use goop too, but I like welders. Welders, in my opinion, is some of the strongest glue you can get. So I'm going to clean this up slightly. It's not so bad. And I'm going to coat the booms with welder's glue. I'm going to make sure I'm going to get the little spars that stuck out. Also, I already dry fit this. You can use the X-Acto blade and poke it in the wing where these go in to make sure that they're going to slide in nice. So I'm going to coat this up. And I'm going to lightly coat the inside of the wing where the booms meet the wing. And smear this glue around, make sure it covers all the areas, all the spars. And I'm wearing work clothes, so I'll just wipe this off on my work clothes. Now, I'm going to slide this in. Make sure they go in nice and even. And what I'm going to do for this is I'm going to shim it I need it to at least match the motor mount angle. I want to get it level. So what I'm going to do is put a little level on here. My level's a little too big. I'm going to use these rolls of tape to shim it out. So it's nice and level. Perfect. So I'm going to use the same size shim over here. That way we don't have a crooked boom. Nobody likes a crooked boom. Now, I will pin her down so she stays. Then once this is dry later, I'll come back around. I like using goop for edges and stuff. I put the tip on the goop like this, and I will caulk the edges and lightly finger them so they're smooth. Go around all the edges on the top and bottom, and caulk it to that so it looks a lot better and it has a lot better of a bond. I'm going to put a few little weights here. I'm not going to touch it. We're going to let it sit. Okay, I got my fuselage wired up to what I can do now. I got my RSSI from my OSD going to the radio bay. VTX is hooked up to my OSD. Camera wires going through a little tiny tube straw I put in, running to the camera. I test it all, works good. And since I cut through here all the way, I'm going to wait till I get the wing connected to the fuselage, and then I'll put that in. Then I'll glue around the edge and run my ESC signal wire straight through this little hole I put here for all my radio stuff, and we should be pretty tight. So just measure your, like I showed you before, measure center, then measure this, and make your marks to line it up right. Wipe it down with some alcohol, goop it up, slide the fuselage on, and you'll be set. Okay, well, I got everything wired up. I got my servos working. I got my rear servo cut out. I put mine on the bottom. It's better to mount them vertically, but since I'm using these big servos, I can't really mount them vertically because they're really wide. I don't like the way they sit. So I took and cut out halfway through the coroplast, made a little square, and I glued one in here. And yeah, so far so good. I got the motor running so far with this motor and this combo. Feels like it has a good amount of thrust for the weight that this plane has so far. Overall, I'm pretty happy with it. Now, what I did notice is my elevon hits just a little bit here, but it won't go up that high, so I'm not too concerned. The rates would probably throw way less than that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lift the aileron up so I can get this square on a right angle with the hinge, and I will line it up with the servo horn here, and that way we can line up where we're going to put our horns, and we're going to get started on our linkages. So here we go. I'll line that up, and then I'm going to do the same for this, but I might do that off cam since it's a little hard to get to here. So it's where our control horns are going to go. Now what I'm going to do is just take a pick and or just one of these T-pins here in my pile of junk, and I'm going to mark it out. I'm going to line this part of the control horn up with this line. That way we know we will get a straight linkage with little resistance. Also, I'm going to use this to double check. This is kind of a finicky part of a build always, just getting this lined up right. Pain in the ass. So it looks like our line we made is pretty true. So I'm going to line this up with the line I made earlier. And one important note is make sure the holes for the control horns are lined up over top of your hinge for your ailerons. And I'm going to mark these holes, then drill them out. So I got my holes marked right here and here, and I'm going to go ahead and drill these out, get the control horn on, put the screw through it, 2 screws through it into the backing plate. And I'm not going to sit and do all of them, so I'm just going to fast forward to the end. Drill holes, mount it. Next I'm going to do my linkage. I got these all mounted. I actually did this one on that one. It was just short. I just made them touch together just because my servo was up so short. I had to make up for that little change I did. So what you basically want to do is take your linkages, put them on. Is the best way I've found to get a measurement easiest. And I'll measure from where the thread starts from here to where the thread ends here. So I'll get this at pretty much close to a 0 degree, and I will measure that. Looks like we're sitting at about 3 3/4. It doesn't have to be perfect because you can always adjust it, but that should work. So 3 3/4 would be about yay big, and it'll go to here, and go to here, and it looks like it'll go down a little bit also, so that's good. We'll have a little more. Rather be too long than too short. And then you can adjust it accordingly once you get them on and when you get tuning in. So I actually used all thread. I'm not using the stock linkage. I'm using some stuff that also came off some down birds, so I just think it's better. Never used the stuff that came with the kit. I'm not saying I don't like it or any of that. I just rather use what I'm familiar with. So I got both of these cut. I'm going to screw these on and turn it on, center my servos so they're straight up. Try to mount this straight up, get it so when it's all sitting at 0, everything's flat. Okay, now for the last step. I got the linkages on. I turned on my radio so the servos are even, dead 0, and I played with the linkages and played with these servo horns till they were at a right angle sticking up with the airfoil, at a right angle with the airfoil actually, so that when I put this straight edge on here I had 0 reflex because these are not elevons. So next up and lastly, because I'm not going to go over tuning it, I am going to do the rear winglets. So basically all they're going to do is going to go off this back edge with our dry erase marker. I'm going to go off this back edge with my square, take the dry erase marker, mark a line, and this one for the inside, and then I'm going to mark another line on this one going to this corner so we know it's straight. And basically I'm going to scuff this up a bit, scuff that up a bit, and line this up even parallel with the back, and put my line right on the rear wing, and I'm going to glue it just like that. And we should be ready for mating tomorrow.